Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
What's up, my dudes, and welcome back to the channel. I did see a lot of you guys recommend I check out this video from Bumbles, one and done fighting game characters. I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to mean. Are there like certain fighting game characters that people really like that only appeared within one version of the game? Maybe this will be a video covering that sort of topic, but we'll see how it goes. Oh, and I think I saw on the thumbnail, like right in the middle, isn't that supposed to be Cronin? I think we're currently learning about King of Fighters here on the channel, so maybe I just associated his face with it. I don't know. We'll see. But of course, before we get into the video, please go and support Bumbles. Link to the original video is at the very top of the description, like always.
When it comes to fighting games, a lot of different factors influence which one you pick up. Are there mechanics that seem interesting? Does the game feel good to play? Is the art style appealing? A lot of things can influence what you decide to pass over in favor of Beyblade Metal Masters on the DS, but
What? There was a Beyblade fighting game? Of course there was. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of different factors and different criteria depending on the person. I'm kind of just interested in general in fighting games, so any game that has some really fun lore and cool characters and neat animations to look at, I'm kind of interested in trying out.
Among all of these is the roster. There are plenty of fighting games that are no doubt top of the line, with mechanics
Injustice?
I would really enjoy. But if the roster doesn't reach out and grab you immediately, if you don't find that one character you want to learn based purely on how they look, it's gonna get passed over. For more
Oh yeah. I think a lot of people underestimate how just the way a character appears affects so many people's perception of a fighting game or their interest in playing it. Because in general, for anybody new who's getting into the game, I would personally recommend just pick whoever you think looks cool or hot. It's really just those two options. Anybody that you'd be willing to invest a lot of time into to play and learn, it just starts from that sort of simple desire, you know? I'd say in some ways, it's very similar to a gacha game and how carefully they have to figure out their character design and how to promote that character and what the appeal behind said character is, because obviously they want you to spend money to pull for said character. Fighting games are kind of the same thing.
Casual players, the choice of what character to play doesn't usually come down to who's the best on a tier list or who has the best tools.
Yeah.
It's all about who
looks
looks
cool.
like they'd be the most fun to play, if they have cool moves or if their personality is fun. Did you pick Nagoriyuki in Guilty Gear Strive because his 5k was only -2 on block? Or did you pick...
Imagine. That would be hilarious though. Just get like a friend who knows nothing about fighting games, try to introduce them to Strive, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the guy who's -2 with his 5k. And it's like, what? Nani? Something is suspicious here. But yeah, no, people pick Nago because he looks fucking badass. He's like one of the best designed characters newly introduced to Guilty Gear.
Pick him because he's a goddamn vampire samurai.
Hell
Fighting
yeah.
game characters are just as much about play.
Hey, this is a KOF 98 Ultimate match, yeah? We just played that like yesterday, at least as I'm recording this video. It was super fun.
Ability as they are about character, the type of character that lets them stick around for fight after fight. But for every Ryu, Terry, and Scorpion, you have the other ones. Characters who manage to join the roster of the best, only to get swept under the rug after a single outing. The fighting game one-and-dones are a very special class. Fighting games love to bring back old characters. It's a chance to bring back a classic playstyle or a beloved character, or even take it in a whole new direction in either of those regards. To get left behind completely means something had to have gone wrong. And
Soul
today, I
Calibur?
really want to look and see what happened to these guys that were all but abandoned, and see how the series they come from have treated them in their absence. Now, as for the confines we're working in today, we're not going to be looking at boss characters. These are usually designed as one-offs anyway, and if SNK had to keep bringing back Rugal in every entry, Mexico would declare war on Japan. Second...
man. Okay, I'm so glad that we learned about KOF before I got into these videos, because, yeah, I get the joke. SNK boss syndrome is a thing for a reason. And I dread the day when I finally decide, yeah, I'm good enough at KOF. I think it's time for us to try out the boss fight and see what this SNK boss syndrome thing is that people are talking about. I can only imagine the amount of frustration I will experience in that day. It will likely be something akin to my frustration playing Hollow Knight as my first platformer, and ending the series with an attempt at Path of Pain. I did not end the stream until I beat Path of Pain. That was a mistake.
Kindly no guest characters. Sorry, but if you thought that Spartan Nicole was here to stay in Dead or Alive, You're a better dreamer than I am.
Yeah.
We're also gonna be nicer to the newer characters. I mean, if Marissa and Manon are so popular, how come they're only in one game?
Well,
some just haven't had the chance to make another
in,
appearance yet. Collector, Lucia, Mian. These aren't unpopular characters. There's just only so many roster slots to pass around. Now, there is
Later
an
KOF,
exception, and that's if a character was so unpopular in their debut outing that it's pretty obvious that they're not coming back. This is gonna matter a lot with King of Fighters. Finally, and this one might be a bit more contentious, but dream matches will not be counted for appearances. What I mean is that games where the whole gimmick is, we brought everybody back, as an excuse to reuse assets is not enough to escape discussion. I am dubbing this the Mortal Kombat Armageddon rule, because Su Hao cannot escape what's coming for him. Street Fighter.
Oh, I just noticed all the Yu-Gi-Oh cards that cover the screen. I think that was Vanquish Souls. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh archetype that's based around fighting games, essentially. I quit Master Duel before Vanquish Souls got released, so I never got to try them out, but I've heard that they're actually pretty good when mixed with other stuff. And some days, I think maybe I should get back into Yu-Gi-Oh. And then after thinking about it for a little bit, I remember the reason why I quit, and all those games where I never actually got to even play a card in the first place because I didn't draw the out, so yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh! Can get pretty crazy if you lose the coin flip.
Here is our first stop. It gave us Makoto, we owe it that much. Now, Street Fighter 2 is responsible for every game we're talking about today, and every fighting game period. I have no doubt that without Street Fighter 2, fighting games would look completely different. In fact, Street Fighter 2 is such a ubiquitous name in terms of video games, you might not even catch yourself saying the two. The first Street Fighter is a butcher's attempt at a wedding cake.
It
looks a bit like a fighting game, but got almost everything else wrong. Now, in all fairness, they had nobody to show them how to do it right, but that doesn't really change how the game came out. It's stiff and controls like garbage. The graphics are unimpressive and bland, and you have to wrestle super moves out of the game with no assurity that they're going to come out. This, coming after this, is almost believable. But only if this is a Street Fighter V. A huge cast selectable all at the start wasn't really how fighting games worked yet. You had Ryu, looking the way he would for the next 30 years until Capcom decided he had earned a beard, Ken, who is Ryu but red, and the rest. None were selectable, and even less were interesting. Now, a few characters did escape the vortex that was Street Fighter 1, and those that did so for the better. Obviously, the big winner in this regard is Sagat. The one-eyed Muay Thai champion is one of the most beloved characters in the whole franchise.
Okay, if I do ever try out Street Fighter 6, you know, I was originally going to main Mai because I just play characters that I think are hot, but you know, being Thai as well as somebody who's practiced a little bit of Muay Thai before, I feel like I gotta at least give Sagat a try, you know. That being said, I don't think in Muay Thai we can really throw out fireballs like Sagat can, but he's just built different.
Massive crowd pleaser and DLC pusher, and would go on to become one of Ryu's longest standing rivals. But he's not the only one who crawled out of the tar pits. Adon would Jaguar Revolver his way through the Alpha series into Street Fighter 4. Gen would follow a similar path and introduce stance-based fighting.
We haven't learned Street Fighter yet.
Birdie would, after a quick dose of the almighty melanin, come back in Alpha and even found a way onto Street Fighter V's base roster. Hey everybody, I made it onto the Street Fighter V base roster! Why do you sound excited about that? Heck, even Eagle managed to get into Capcom vs. SNK after the old alpha Spit and Shine, but notably, all of these characters are from the latter half of the arcade ladder. Starting out, your run pits you against Retsu, Geki, Joe, Mike, and Lee. Yeah, the original Street Fighter wasn't exactly reaching for the stars with Brazilian monster men and Russian pro wrestlers.
So, from what I recall, the original creator of Street Fighter actually had like a whole lot of backstory for these characters, but because of the time this was made, the technology that they had back then couldn't really convey all of that, and a lot of it got stripped down to its bare bones, which made them kind of uninteresting, unfortunately. But then he moved over to SNK and then made the Fatal Fury franchise. If you know anything about those, they have a lot of lore behind the characters there. And so many different characters there too.
Their idea of exotic was a black guy. These characters are as basic as they get. Nothing really inspiring on the gameplay or design front. They weren't meant to be much more than beat-em-up grunts with a bit more health, but even then, 2 fights back-to-back with guys in jeans? There isn't anything worth bringing back with these guys, and short of a complete reworking, there's nothing to really do with them. And a total rework would make them feel like a brand new character. So why not just make a brand new character?
Nothing to work with.
Lee fans will be fine if their spot is taken up by Aki. They've been through worse. None of these 5 ever appeared in a playable capacity after this point. Geki even got downgraded in the comics from an individual to a blanket name used for a whole ninja clan. That is worth noting, though. Street Fighter has done a fairly good job making sure no character ever goes unrepresented for very long.
Okay,
sure,
that's
not
cool.
everybody can be playable, but characters like Mike, Joe, and Lee, who otherwise would have been relegated to the dustbin of history, have these neat little entries on the Shadaloo CRI website that show they weren't forgotten. Heck, even a Geki clan.
I mean, look, you gotta respect your elders, right? Street Fighter is such a massive franchise and probably like the biggest fighting game currently on the market. And it all started from these humble beginnings. It's a part of history now.
Member managed to sneak into Vega's arcade mode ending in Street Fighter V. Not to mention, all 5 of them have made appearances in the Udon Street Fighter comic series, which isn't something everyone can say. Because Remy hasn't gotten in yet. Hands down, though, the biggest winner of the lot is Retsu. He managed to make it into Street Fighter VI's World Tour mode as a fightable opponent.
Really?
And while he may just use Ryu's style, the fact that enough attention was paid to such an obscure character from such an unloved section of the series is commendable on Capcom's part. Next comes Street Fighter II, and the World Warriors have gotten exceptionally fine treatment, showing up in pretty much every game.
I mean, Street Fighter 2, all these characters that were introduced are kind of the face of fighting games. You could probably go up to somebody who doesn't really play games at all, let alone fighting games, and show them a picture of Guile, and they'll probably recognize him, if not know his name.
No matter how E-Honda they are. I say almost, though, because after Street Fighter II, Capcom and the Street Fighter team were interested not so much in continuing the legacy of 2, but carving a whole new path. How could they have known it would have led into a brick wall? The mission statement behind Street Fighter 3 was to make something new without relying on what had worked before. The roster? All gone, save for the most popular ones, Ken and Ryu.
Interesting.
In their place would be a whole new cast of characters that, while some may resemble the older fighters, would be completely new and shake up everything people thought Street Fighter was. For instance, a lot of people thought that Street Fighter was popular and made money. The idea to shake up the roster this drastically was a very bold choice. But it was one that initially did not pay off in the slightest. No Chun-Li, no Guile, no Zangief, no Dalsim, no Blanca. The characters that had started the fighting game boom were gone. And unlike the Alpha series, it was hard for players to tell which characters got which functions. Charlie having a Guile's moves, pretty easy to tell. Even in storyline, he's Guile's best friend, and if you don't share how to do a flash kick with your buddies, don't be surprised when you're not invited to the barbecue.
I didn't know this about Third Strike, but yeah, that seems like a very bold move. When you have characters that have clearly sold a game for you, and then you just kind of like get rid of them for characters that have very similar moves to them, I don't know. I think for most people that would feel more like a downgrade, but I also have to give them props for at least trying to innovate, which is something that we talk a lot about when we learn about KOF, because there are quite a few KOF entries that not really the greatest ones out there, but SNK were really trying to experiment with different things that either worked out or didn't, and I'm just glad that they're trying something new. But I can also see a situation like this leading to, I forget which KOF game it was, but I believe there was a specific KOF game that did not have Mai Shiranui, and No Mai No Bai became trending. And the game sales kind of reflected that. So they made sure that Mai was definitely in the next game and featured prominently.
But finding which character played like Guile out of this lineup? This one. In their place were characters that weren't bad per se, and certainly filled the functions that the old characters did, but it's just not what people wanted. In the time since the game's release, though, and with the tournament scene heating up in a huge way, the game and its characters started to get looked back on a lot more fondly. Now characters like
really?
Makoto, Ibuki, and Dudley were considered fan favorites. And when the time came to add new characters to Super Street Fighter 4, these were the picks that managed to make the leap, alongside Yang and Yun in the Arcade Edition, and Elena and Hugo in Ultra. Add on Alex, Oro, 12, Urien, and Gil in Street Fighter V, and it may have been a rocky start, but they managed to recover the roster nicely. That does leave 4 characters in the dust. These 4 characters are the only ones who have yet to make an appearance in a Street Fighter game after the dust had settled, and each one carries a fairly interesting story as to why it ended up that way. Let's start with the man in the wrong game, Remy. Introduced in Third Strike, Remy was a unique character among the cast, being a charge character in the same vein as Charlie and Guile. Charge characters largely forsake the quarter circle forward in favor of holding back and then quickly snapping forward to perform their special moves, which in Remy's case are the standard Sonic Boom and Flash Kick that his charge contemporaries have. Now, most people see what Remy brings to the table and only see that, his Flash Kick and Sonic Boom.
So yeah, my question then is, what makes him unique from characters like Guile or other characters that copy Guile? Like, why would you play Remy over them?
And brand him just a lamer Guile. That's not really fair though, as he does have moves that neither Guile nor Charlie have, like his Cold Blue Kick, which allows him to stay mobile, and he's overall more offensively focused than the other charge characters. There are still reasons, though, that when tier lists are put together, Remy usually hangs out near the bottom. His damage is only okay. He has the worst super art in the game in Blue Nocturne, his normals overall aren't great, and then there's the reason I say he's in the wrong game. If you know Street Fighter 3, you know how important parrying is. The most famous fighting game clip ever shows off just how vital parrying is to the game of Street Fighter 3. If you're gonna play this game, you need to know how to do it. Parrying in Street Fighter 3 is done by tapping forward just as an attack would hit you to snuff it out. Fans of Directions may have just noticed a huge problem this presents for Remy.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. You're a charge character. You want to be holding back, but you got to parry forward. So then you just give up your charge? Then how are you going to throw out any moves? Wait a minute. Okay, I see. I guess the way that they kind of got over that sort of a road bump in later games was to have that be like a dedicated button. Like, I'm pretty sure in Street Fighter 6 you can also parry, but it uses up a little bit of resource and you have to press like a combination of 2 buttons, something like that. I haven't played Street Fighter 6 yet, so. But at the very least, that means that you can still kind of parry as a charge character without really having to sacrifice that.
Remy as a charge character is at odds with the most important mechanic for high-level Street Fighter 3. Losing the charge that he needs for every one of his specials, except for the Cold Blue Kick, every time he parries. Now, there is a technique called charge partitioning, where you're able to store up the charge for a charged move for a few extra frames after pressing forward, But if you're
Really?
gonna learn how to charge partition, just play Urian. Those parries as well meant that suddenly every character had pretty universal options to deal with fireballs like Remy's. When learning how to parry, everybody tells you to practice on fireballs, since they're a safe starting point with not much follow-up. In Street Fighter II, Guile was able to menace the entire roster with sonic booms, which necessitated unsafe movement to escape from, or a block that kept them from approaching. While parrying through Remy's fireballs didn't even lose you positioning, since all you had to do was parry. You either had to pick between charging your move and presenting any sort of threat, or parrying and staying alive. Parrying is both the easiest way to deal with Remy and the hardest thing for Remy to do. Of course, this is all without the third option, which is to pick Makoto and win games. Now, like I said, gameplay isn't everything, and Dan exists, so being a top tier isn't all that goes into being a popular character.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, even bottom tier characters that aren't very strong will still have their fans if the characters themselves have a unique playstyle, can differentiate themselves from the rest of the cast, and there's just some sort of unique appeal to them. Does Remy have that, though?
For Remy, though, it's not just gameplay where he's deficient. Remy's addition in Street Fighter III put him in an odd spot, as he's neither an important character to the game's Illuminati plotline like Urian, Necro, or 12, or a bombastic enough personality to stand out like Dudley, Hugo, or Ibuki. He's quiet, moody,
what?
And lacks the love for fighting that most characters have.
Wait. He's not a part of the plot, he doesn't have an interesting personality, and he shares a lot of moves with Guile. So then, what are we supposed to do with this character, and why does he exist within the game?
In fact, he hates fighting, and wants to take revenge on the fighters of the world by fighting them. Remy's hatred for fighters, while being a fighter himself, is a pretty heavily mocked aspect of his character. One that kind of obscures how his arcade mode ending is him returning to his dead sister who's trapped in ice, dropping her in the ocean, and then leaving. Without a cap-
What? What is bro doing? Okay, let's contrast this with a character like Iori Yagami from King of Fighters. He is also a character that dislikes fighting, and yet he was born into the Yagami clan. And they have the Orochi blood. Sometimes it takes over them, makes them incredibly violent. Then there's the whole revenge plot against Kyo, being kind of like one of his reasons to be within the King of Fighters tournament, and I think that at least makes for a much more compelling story that does end up in a very interesting place, at least by the end of the first arc anyways. But for Remy here, yeah, I can kind of understand why his backstory gets mocked.
Captivating personality or a gameplay style that impressed, Remy is largely considered the most forgettable character in 3's whole roster. And without the groundswell of support other characters got, his chances of returning have only dwindled with time. There's honestly more support to get him in just because he's been omitted than there is for him from genuine fans. He's not hated or anything, he's no Rufus, but just like Remy himself, it's mostly ambivalence. One character with way more fan support, and probably the strangest Street Fighter of all time, though, is Necro. Immediately a departure from Remy's bad boy design, which feels more at home as a redesigned Iori Yagami than as a Street Fighter character, Necro is the exact...
Pre-watched. But I mean, yeah, that whole plotline just really made me think of Iori. And Iori is like one of those beloved characters in fighting games out there. Remy could have Bite a Baby been that, but yeah, things didn't turn out that way. There was unfortunately a lot that he didn't have going for him, unlike Iori and his peak character design.
Exact brand of Capcom weird that gave us Dhalsim and Blanca. Speaking of those two, they're actually the sources of inspiration for Necro, taking Dhalsim's stretchy limbs and dive kick, as well as Blanca's electrical powers. Unlike those two, I can shake the hand of a Necro player without reaching for the disinfectant. Where Remy failed to set himself apart from his inspirations, Necro is a beautifully unique freak that couldn't be mistaken as either of his predecessors. Instead of keeping the opponent at range with long normals and projectiles, Necro is looking to pressure the opponent into the corner where a biblical beatdown will then commence.
Damn.
Then there's the obvious part of Necro, his design and animations. Necro oozes charisma and charm with every move. Watching him contort and swing as he tries to knock you out, pose confidently as he covers himself in electricity, and his almost hypnotically smooth idle stance makes him the type that stands out no matter what. That's all ignoring that he is a tall, bald Russian man with toothpaste white skin, purple suspenders, and a red tattoo who loves opera, trash talk, and a goth girlfriend who wields a chainsaw. Necro is dripping with style, and with a gameplay style to match, he became a fan favorite, if not the most competitive character in the game.
Like, it doesn't matter. This is what I was talking about. He is unique in a way that no other character has ever matched before. And also, it's these small little details that don't really seem to have a whole lot to do with the game itself that I think a lot of people learn about and kind of get attached to. But yeah, for this character, I think it's very easy to see why people enjoy him.
Oh, he's a fun and unique character with a lot of fan support. Why hasn't he made it back into a game yet? Well, Necro is a case of right place, wrong time. See, after Street Fighter 3 came out and Capcom moved away from fighting games, it took a long time for Street Fighter to come back. And when it did, it was with Street Fighter 4, which was treated as a return to basics. All the characters you remember exactly as you remember them, which includes Dhalsim and Blanca. This is just—
Oh, but if there's already Dhalsim and Blanca, then if you have Necro there, he doesn't really have a place in the roster, right? He's only there in the third strike because they didn't have Dhalsim or Blanca. That's unfortunate. And I wonder if you can maybe like still use the same character design but come up with something new and unique for him to then maybe bring him back later on. That said, I kind of doubt it simply because of, you know, Dhalsim and Blanca kind of being staples within the series now.
Speculation on my part, but I think feature creep kept Necro out of the lineup. Cause you have the stretchy guy, you have the electric guy, so what's the use for a stretchy electric guy?
Yeah.
That's not to say similar movesets can't exist. The second most popular character is the first most popular character in red, and the third is him in black, and the fourth is him in a dress. But in a game that was looking to bring back casual and nostalgic Street Fighter fans, I can understand Necro being low on the list of fighters to return. It's the same explanation they gave for Oro. He's just too weird. Then 5 introduced Lara to fill the electric slot, and even later brought back Blanca, with Dhalsim still kicking around, and Necro found himself shafted again. Now, I do like his chances. Of the 4 characters left in Street Fighter 3, I get the feeling that Necro is due up next. But it's a case of, I love him, but I get why he's not here. If not—
I'm kind of in the same spot. I mean, obviously, I don't have a personal love for the character, but just learning about him here, I think his concept is cool. I think the design is neat, but I also understand why he's not there, and I can also see a world where he doesn't come back simply because of the 2 other characters that he was based on.
Nothing else, we need to get Snowland back in a game already. Now for the 3rd Street Fighter castaway, it's by far the saddest story. Sean Matsuda. Now, Ryu has always had Sakura as a secondary character to act as a mini-him, but Sakura made sure to differentiate herself to become a fan favorite separate from her connection to Ryu. With a character like that, the question came up of who Ken's Sakura would be, and from that came Sean. A basketball-loving Street Fighter who idolized Ken Masters, and refused to give up until he became his protege. Ken wasn't really looking to become a teacher since probably not very good at it, but after losing contact with Ryu, he decided that training Sean might be enough to pull his friend out of hiding. Now, when Sean first came out in Street Fighter 3, he was a demon, an extremely strong character who was fast, built meter like crazy, spent it constantly, and was pretty much impossible to keep up with. See,
it feels like Shoto characters are always gonna end up somewhere near the top of the tier list. Like, they just have all the tools and they're pretty solid.
Seeing how he plays in the first iteration of Street Fighter III and in Giant Attack, the second revision, versus how he plays in Third Strike is the difference between morning, noon, and night, because he got better in Second Impact, and then Third Strike happened. Nerfs in fighting games can be said to kill a character. And that's usually exaggeration. The character is fine post-nerf and just has to work harder to get what they used to get for free.
Yeah.
Sean is not one such case. Sean in Third Strike is in the running for maybe the worst nerfing a character has ever received in a fighting game.
What do they do to him?
Being a Shoto means he shares moves with Ken and Ryu and Terry and Kazuya.
All the Shoto characters.
Smash players. But every move he has is just a worse version of what Ken and Ryu get. His reach isn't as good, his attacks don't deal as much damage, and they're not as safe, which means that on hit, Sean can be punished. Fighting in a fighting game is considered a suboptimal play.
Wait. What? Okay. I don't know too much about Third Strike, but I did watch at Evo this year. The guy who was playing Hugo, and the commentators talked about how he had used a move to go over another move, which is a move that you normally don't use because even on hit, it's negative, which is a really weird concept to me, that there are moves that actively punish you for guessing correctly. That makes no goddamn sense. But I guess older fighting games were built different, literally. So why in the world do we think this would be a good idea? Now he literally has no reason to exist if you can just play the other characters that are better than him at what he does.
Supers he could abuse in Giant Attack were nerfed into the dirt until he had absolutely no tools left. He was quite literally just a worse version of Ken and plummeted to the bottom of tier lists.
Yeah.
Only with a 12-sized crash pad to keep him from hitting rock bottom. Why did this happen? And whose cornflakes did Sean piss in to make it that way? Well, the reason for Sean's nerfing is actually one that we know. And the reason is crazy insulting to pretty much anyone involved. The developers of Third Strike could tell they were making a very technically complex game. One that the good players were great at, and the bad players were horrible at. So they decided to include a mechanically weak character that good players could pick up when playing with bad players. That would give them a chance.
What the fuck? You've gotta be shitting me. You intentionally made Sean a character for good players to play against people who were noobs to actively throw against them. Huh? I cannot fathom how you thought of this, and who in the world passed this as a good idea. This is so dumb. And it's insulting too to new people to fighting games. Like, there is an aspect to it of like, you know, maybe you shouldn't go all out with everything that you have against somebody who's completely new, because it's really fun. I think games are fun when you're playing against somebody who is of a similar skill level, and there's like an exchange of wins and losses, and then you get to grow from each other by telling each other why you won the last match, what you can do to improve, and sharing that information back and forth. I think that's great. I'm so lucky to be in a position where I have people around me who are of the same skill level that I can just call up and play with. But I would never want somebody who is better than me to intentionally go easy on me and start throwing matches. It's fine if they pick a character that's unfamiliar to them, but throwing is just kind of insulting. Of course, to cover my bases, there's obviously some nuance to that. You probably don't want to go all out against a kid who's trying to learn his first fighting game, you know? That'd feel kind of bad. But at least when it comes to me, I would feel horrible. I would not want to play against that person.
It's to beat them and to feel good. For some reason, Sean was picked, and from there, he was broken to the point of no return. This philosophy is flawed, though, as no fighting game player possesses basic human empathy. Sean's popularity and play rate plummeted in Third Strike, relegated to near joke character status as he struggled hard against his fellow low tiers in 12 and Remy, and against someone like Chun-Li or Yun or Master
He's gonna get
Ken,
wrecked.
not a chance.
Yeah.
Now, Sean still has his fan base. The players from the Second Impact days have been crying out for Sean's re-inclusion, and to bring him back to his former glory, but it seems less and less likely the more time passes. Lara, on top of gatekeeping Necro out of Street Fighter V, seems to have done the same thing to Sean, as in the story, she's his older sister, so there wasn't much of a reason to include both the Matsuda siblings in a single game.
Yeah.
With Street Fighter VI, though, Sean's chances are looking up, especially with Ken's current plotline being the perfect place for his plucky former student to step in and give him a hand. So, Sean fans at least have that to cling on to. As for the final fighter, I don't even think his fans know what to expect. Q, the trenchcoat-wearing pseudo-cyborg introduced at the very end of 3's life cycle in Third Strike. Q is an enigma in every way possible. Backstory? Q's backstory is nestled between P and S. We know pretty much nothing about him, aside from that he's wanted by the government, and he started as a background character on Ken's stage in Street Fighter II. That ambiguity led to tons of theories as to his origins, from being Chun-Li's father in an iron mask, to being an android that escaped from the Illuminati, a serial killer, a detective, a ghost. You can draw any conclusion you want from him, since Capcom gave us so much wiggle room on his origins. He has a very strange theme that feels totally different from the rest of the cast, while still being absolutely fantastic. He's the only character without a stage specific to him, he's the only character who shows his muscular system instead of his skeleton when he's shocked, all of his bio-info is unknown. Q is a captivating character based purely on how little Capcom gave us to work with. His erratic tendencies extend to his gameplay as well, as Q has one of the most bizarre playstyles out of the whole
really
roster.
Weird moves.
He doesn't have a fighting style or even much of a plan when it comes to fighting, just swinging his arms with the force of a truck and the grace to match. He's kind of a rushdown, kind of a grappler, all wrapped up in a gimmick where taunting gives him a defensive buff. Q is a bad character in Third Strike, but he's not uninteresting. The community around Q and blabbing him out.
It's just the mystery and the intrigue behind the character can be so enticing for people to want to know more about him, to learn about him, to try and play him. But I suspect the reason why we're talking about him here on this video is because he never returned and we never did anything with this character afterwards, which is kind of a bummer, considering this is kind of the perfect setup for a pretty major plot twist. Or maybe we're still saving that for later on in the future. I don't know. It's a neat concept though, and I haven't explored a fighting game yet that's done something like this, I think. At least nothing pops up into my mind like straight off the top of my head, so.
Figuring out how he works and how to execute his potential properly is a fervent one. Q fans are among the most dedicated fans for any character in Street Fighter. So then what are his chances for getting into another game? He already did? As if Q's entire existence couldn't get stranger, in walks the similarly monosyllabic G. Introduced in Street Fighter V, G is the self-appointed president of the world, who spends his days campaigning on the streets in a top hat and sleeveless suit jacket. That shows off his shifting gold tattoos that make up a map of the Earth. G is fast approaching Necro levels of complete insanity, but what does any of this have to do with Q? Well, aside from having a similar fascination with the alphabet, the end of G's reveal trailer revealed his story mode costume, and it was Q! The hat, the jacket, and especially the mask were all obvious Q references, but everything was just a little off. The mask was a hockey mask and not a full iron one. The coat isn't as long, and the default colors aren't Q's colors, but an alt color does give him Q's colors, and the official website even references it. Then there are all the moves that G and Q share, G's complete irrelevancy to 5's story. This only leaves you with even more questions. Are they the same? Does Q take off his mask and hit the campaign trail? Did something happen to G to make him into Q? Is this all just Capcom designing a second, weirder character and deciding to connect them just to screw with people? There's no way of knowing, so as far as Q's chances of getting into another game, heck, he might already be in 6 and nobody's found him yet.
Okay. I mean, it's in a way it's kind of fun, but if you're like a fan of Q, you'd probably be a little bit frustrated not to know more about the guy. Maybe they are saving these like one letter named people for some sort of big reveal later on. That, or it's just like a fun little community theory thing that they're not really going to act upon. Just a nice way to introduce a character that doesn't necessarily have to be tied into the plot, but they get to kind of like stretch their creative minds and think of new moves for this character. If you guys know anything about these characters, or Q, or I don't know if they're the same person, who knows, let me know. Maybe some more information has come out ever since this video, or somebody discovered something in the files or something like that.
Mortal Kombat's one and dones, we're not going to be so much looking at the beginning of the franchise or where it is now, but those awkward teenage years. God, it is so embarrassing when you start growing polygons in places there weren't before. The PlayStation 2 era was a complicated time for Mortal Kombat, embracing the 3D style that was introduced in Mortal Kombat 4 and staying that way for 4 more games. This era is very divisive. Either you love the 3D Mortal Kombat games, or you hate them. It's hard to find anybody who has any middle ground.
Interesting.
That same push and pull applies to...
Oh, I never knew there were Mortal Kombat games that were 3D fighters. I always thought they were traditional 2D fighters, with the only difference being that they had a dedicated button to block. But I guess this was around the era where 3D was the thing, and so a lot of games decided to transition over into it, despite it not really being the greatest at the time. Also likely around the time when stuff like Tekken and Virtua Fighter and Dead or Alive started taking off. If I had to guess, I don't really have the whole like fighting game history timeline kind of down in my head.
Their rosters, because there are some dead-on hits and some full-on misses. If nothing else, this era of Mortal Kombat gave us Kenshi. And Kenshi's the man. He is so popular that when the universe was restarted and roles were reassigned in Mortal Kombat 1, he was upgraded to main character status, on top of having the coolest moves and fatalities in the game. He's not the only winner though. I really like Frost, but especially when she gets cyberized. Havik is a character that I always wanted to see come back, and thanks to his inclusion in MK1, we got him back in all of his gory glory. But when the 3D era misses, it hits windshields in the parking lot. Dairo is a great template for what you can expect from a bad 3D Mortal Kombat character. Does he have an interesting history? Kinda. He was a guard in the Order Realm whose family got killed by an assassin. And after getting his revenge, his own guard buddies captured him and sentenced him to life in prison. He gets out in a jailbreak and becomes a mercenary, since now he's a fugitive in his own home dimension. That's a good backstory, plenty of intrigue there. Will he ever get back to the Order Realm? Will he find out who sent the assassin that killed his family? Is he gonna get revenge on his guard buddies who sent him to prison? All of these plot threads completely disregarded. Yeah. He explains his entire backstory in a single cutscene during the game's conquest mode, and as soon as he's done...
Oh, you'll love to see it, man. Let's just sit here and talk about why this character is interesting, instead of showing you why this character is interesting. That being said, I have heard that Mortal Kombat story modes are pretty good, although I presume the quality is going to vary very much when it comes to which entry in the series it is.
He leaves the story forever. Has anybody ever told you anything more interesting after they say their entire family was murdered? Mechanically and design-wise, there's nothing about him that really gets across either his old guard status or his new mercenary status. He is the most bog-standard character possible, just fancy armor and a bad haircut. He'd be more at home as a fodder character you fight in the story mode, but he managed to sneak his way onto the base roster and leave a zero impact.
Yeah, he kind of does feel like a fodder character.
Not zero. Yeah. Clearly somebody on the Mortal Kombat team liked him, but thought he would be cooler if his torso was backwards. For as good as Street Fighter is at keeping characters in your mind, Mortal Kombat is that much better. It is extremely good about keeping characters around without keeping them on the roster. It's really hard to finish an arcade mode ending without getting a callback to an obscure character. And Dairo even managed to get better than that. In Mortal Kombat 1, like I said, a bunch of characters have their backstories rewritten, remixed, and refreshed to give them a new lease on life. And for the reintroduction of Havik, why not take the character from the Chaos Realm and put them in the Order Realm? That's right, by getting his face burned off and fully succumbing to madness, Dairo becomes Havik, They took one of the
Oh.
most forgettable characters from the 3D era and rolled him into one of the most memorable, and it worked
Cool.
great. I mean, it is a lot more Havoc than it is Dyro, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, when you think Mortal Kombat, and think I have not interacted with Mortal Kombat in any meaningful capacity since 1995, what do you think? There are too many colored ninjas! Mortal Kombat's Rainbow of Ninjas is easily the most memorable part of its early roster.
Oh yeah, yeah. So many people say get over here, but they might not know about Mortal Kombat, which is kind of funny. That being said, I only know about Scorpion and Sub-Zero. I have to assume that there's going to be more color ninjas out there, though.
If you have a favorite color, it can vivisect people. The trend stopped being noticeable and became unavoidable in Mortal Kombat
God.
Trilogy, with 7 roster slots taken up by ninjas.
There's a lot more,
and
yeah.
an additional 6 being taken up by the female ninjas and cyber ninjas. With so many of them, the devs decided it would be fun to make an
Chameleon.
amalgam character that used all their moves. And from there, Chameleon was born. After work had finished on Chameleon, the team had started to notice that their hearts were beating really funny and fast, and that blood was
What is
gushing from their
happening?
eyes, and they were attempting to swallow their own tongues. It was only after a clever intern pointed out that they had spelled chameleon with a C and not a K that they got to work reusing the female ninja assets to make Chameleon.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat's whole thing is using a K instead. Yeah, true. I wonder if there's a lore reason for that. It's like a language thing in that universe. Yeah, I know literally nothing about this series, by the way, so a lot of this is probably going over my head. But it's interesting to see regardless.
Pair were translucent versions of the basic ninja models, and would quickly flash between each of the different colors, and have access to all their moves depending on the color they were at the moment. Now, the pair were clearly meant to be a little joke towards the fact they had so many color-coded ninjas, but there was still an attempt to work them into the lore. Chameleon was said to be a Zaterran, the same race as Reptile, who had managed to escape the slaughter of their realm by turning invisible, and now wanted revenge on Shao Kahn for what he had done. Meanwhile, Inferior Chameleon was just a guy who watched from the shadows, waiting for his time to strike.
I see.
Yeah, it's time for the big reveal. This is not about Chameleon. It's only about male Chameleon. See, Chameleon actually makes an appearance in Mortal Kombat 1 as a cameo
really?
character. A position that's currently keeping Shujinko, Movado, Tremor, Darius, and somehow only Farah from suffering a similar fate. There was clearly attention given to Chameleon both then and now to make her feel at least a little bit more like the sort of character that could fit in with the rest of the cast. But Chameleon? Nah, he's just a guy. Switches colors.
Don't worry about it.
He turns invisible. You already have a ninja that can turn invisible. Why do you need a guy who can do it but worse? Even in Armageddon, a game that is not gonna help his chances of getting out of this, that game still leaves his arcade mode ending super unfulfilling, saying the whole story was he was waiting for his chance to make his mark, and now he has! Telltale of the mighty Chameleon, who valiantly snuck past all opposition, then promptly faded into the wallpaper. If you want somebody who's gonna stick out no matter what, that's Draman. Kind of the inverse of
Does he just have
Gyro here. Draman
flies?
can't help but stand out in a lineup, thanks to his skinless body, club
Ooh.
hand, and colorful mask. As for a backstory to match that gruesome design, the team didn't seem to be sure of what somebody would have to do to deserve a fate like this. They eventually came to the conclusion he was either such a ruthless warlord who slaughtered hundreds of people that he had his bones ripped apart by demons, or he was a landlord. He got off.
You know, both very comparable occupations. I've been pretty lucky so far, though. Most of the landlords I met have been pretty nice people. I've never met a ruthless warlord, though, so we'll have to see how that experience goes someday.
Off easy. From there, alongside Moloch, saved from this discussion purely based on his sub-boss status, became top hell torture bros and eventually started working for Quan Chi. After their new boss abandons them, the pair set out to get revenge. On the move.
That is a hilarious move, actually. I kind of love him a little bit just for the spinny arm move.
Set side 2, He's not half bad, able to slam the ground with his club hand, swing it around like a propeller, and even gather up a ball of flies to fling at the opponent. Of all of the characters from the 3D era, Drammen is one that a lot of people are surprised hasn't returned in some form. But it gets a lot less surprising when you read the interview with Ed Boon, where
what was wrong with Drammen? I thought he was an interesting
alongside
character.
he was his least
Ask me stuff, Drammen coming back as a main fighter, not likely, damn.
favorite character introduced in the era. This goes along with
Really?
his bio card, where Ed Boon discusses how difficult a character Drammen was to develop. And I can't imagine it's a well he's eager to go back to. Luckily,
Okay.
we do get to see how he's holding up since we last saw him. I never said you wanted to see it. However, we are
He's dead! I guess they had this, like, neat idea, but when they actually got down to work on it from the technical side, it was a bit of a pain. So in that aspect, I can somewhat understand why they wouldn't want to continue with such a character. But whenever that happens, it is still kind of a shame. I'm sure that there were people who enjoyed his unique aesthetics, let's say. And at least from what I picture of Mortal Kombat, he does kind of fit into the roster.
ignoring a large sect of the worst 3D Mortal Kombat has to offer. All 4 of these characters have 2 things in common. They are as bland as they come, and Kano! Yay! Everybody loves Kano! Well, he had proven to be a fan favorite, and his status as a member of the Black Dragon Gang left him with a lot of possibilities for secondary characters. The first time they tried this, absolute and utter success.
What the fuck am I looking at? What is that? Puzzle combat? Is it like combat Tetris? And then you have your little like chibi 3D model guys just fighting here in the foreground whenever you get a pair? What is
Cabal
happening?
instantly fit in with the rest of the roster. Became a fan favorite, extremely dominant in competitive play, couldn't have asked for a better follow-up to Kano. But we could have asked for a worse one. That was Jarek in Mortal Kombat 4. Jarek is not a noteworthy character in any regard. His moveset is just Kano's, but in 3D. His fatalities are just Kano's, but he's in 3D. And the only reason he exists is because he's Kano, but in 3D.
In 3D.
The only reason that Jarek exists is because they killed off Kano at the end of the last game and needed a replacement. The only thing of any note from Jarek is his ending in Mortal Kombat 4, which, aside from being a 3-parter between Sonya, himself, and Jax, is also hilarious.
Jax! I thought you were going to. Thought I was what? Dead? Like my partner you just tossed off the cliff? I'm sorry, Jax. Please, don't drop me. Wait, I promise. Too late, Jarek. You can't drop me. You have to uphold the law. You have to arrest me. Wait, this is brutality. You can't do it. Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
After Jarek
He said the line! Okay, Mortal Kombat might be kind of peak. What was that? This is not a brutality. This is a fatality. No! Man, these older games, they're so funny. They're so charming. This gives you the same giddy feeling as like when you hear Terry Bogard try to speak English, and then it's just it doesn't really sound like it, but he's trying his best and he's saying it so confidently. Like you just can't hate him for it.
unceremonious arrival and exit from the series, the cast of Black Dragon alumni would grow in Mortal Kombat Deception, with the firecrackers of charisma, Kira, and Cobra. There is no joke. The most interesting fact between the 2 of them is that in beta builds of Mortal Kombat Deception, Cobra was called Ken, because they'd just designed Ken Masters again as a shaggy-haired blonde guy who practiced martial arts. He was
Gotcha.
designed as a simple pick-up-and-play character for new players, which makes sense then why you'd theme him after a familiar character like Ken, but all of this without any spice that would actually make somebody want to play him. As he is now, Cobra's motivation extends to, I want to kill people! That's not a motivation, that's a requirement for entry. Kira
Oh, well, especially in Mortal Kombat, I would assume so. But yeah, it seems that we had forgotten the reason behind, like, these sort of characters and why some people find them quite appealing to play is because, you know, they're badass, they're cool, they have unique backstories to them, they have neat designs, and their gameplay isn't too hard to get into. Thinking of something like a Soul Bad Guy or Elfelt in Guilty Gear Strive, who are pretty easy to execute overall, but it's more so who they are that is the appeal to playing them than just their simplistic gameplay.
meanwhile has something? She's meant to be the Black Dragon equivalent to Sonya, so she shares a lot of moves between Kano and Sonya, like her kiss. But these two don't even amount to a tenth of a Jarek. At least he died funny. The pair at least got to make a cameo, with a C, appearance in Mortal Kombat Legends Snowblind, as the Black Dragon are the villains of the movie. They get drastic redesigns, and those unfamiliar with the 3D games would probably assume they were movie original characters. But if you need a show of how Mortal Kombat will never ever let a character go, these two losers got to appear in 2022! But with the Black Dragons came a second criminal organization meant to counter them, the Red Dragons. Led by Movado, these were a gang looking to take out the Black Dragons, and Movado sent his #1 guy to get the job done.
What a pose. This guy? That is a funny-ass design,
is by
man.
far the most infamous of the 3D era characters. When discussing their favorite and least favorite characters from the era, people set aside Su Hao. Almost like a silent agreement that, yeah, we hate this guy, goes without saying. It's like saying you can't pick a starter as your favorite Pokemon. It's too obvious, so don't even consider it. Su Hao was introduced in Deadly Alliance, and landed with a resounding thud. Instantly, people just didn't like Su Hao. It could have been for a lot of different reasons, like how he's another character meant to replace Kano without half the charisma Kano was able to show off. His moves were pretty boring and lacked any impact, his backstory was nothing.
Yeah, he just kind of slaps
He really
you.
doesn't have a
Does have the
character
chest
aside
beam,
from
but,
his mustache.
eh.
All of this made him a really unpopular character. But that doesn't really sound like the makings of the least popular Mortal Kombat character ever. I mean, he's just another one for the pile, but Su Hao seems to get so many more stones thrown his way than the likes of Cobra and Kira, despite being just as bland and forgettable. In fact, it's so many that he's been stoned to death. Anytime Su Hao appears or is mentioned, it is purely so the developers can make fun of how bad he is. In Jax's arcade mode ending in Deadly Alliance, Su Hao is vaporized and canonically killed. In his Armageddon ending, Su Hao is double vaporized and even more canonically killed. In Aaron Black's Mortal Kombat 11 intro, he's decapitated, and if it was any more canon, he'd be shot out of one. Then there are smaller ones, like characters using Su Hao's name as an insult in intro dialogue, him being one of only 2 characters, along with Chameleon with a C, to ever be vocally deconfirmed for both Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat X. What the heck is going on with Su Hao?
Have it your way, Su Hao. That's crazy, bro. Now his name is literally an insult in universe.
Who hates him so much that he ends up getting treated like this? In short, everyone! Su Hao was internally a very unpopular character at Midway/Netherrealms. Longtime writer for the series John Vogel spoke in Su Hao's bio card about how he was disappointed that Su Hao ever had to come back, intending for his death in Deadly Alliance to be final.
But Mortal Kombat Armageddon is about bringing every character back to life, so Su Hao is back, much to my dismay.
Jarek was allowed in Armageddon. Cobra was allowed in Armageddon. Kira was allowed in Armageddon. Draman was allowed in Armageddon. Moloch was allowed in Armageddon. Both Chameleons were allowed in Armageddon. Su Hao, I don't really think we need him. Su Hao was the other character alongside Draman that Ed Boon pointed out was his least favorite from the era. and internally referred to him as the worst character they'd ever made. With the official word from on high about the team's least favorite character, it was only a matter of time before the fandom would try to get in on the joke, and started hating Su Hao as much as the team did. That in turn prompted the team at NetherRealm to return in kind, putting in more and more Su Hao hate until he became a lightning rod for it. Many people who never even played the 3D games came in hating Su Hao just for his garbage reputation. And I can attest to that. I had never played them, but now Su Hao just has this aura about him of, this character sucks, and you know it. Now, don't get me wrong.
Okay, this is kind of different from, like, in the older KOFs, they had this American sports team, but later on they were kind of relegated to getting beaten up by the new characters that were gonna introduce into this KOF, and their invitations just stolen from them. And I think genuinely, like, people actually did like them, but the SNK doesn't for whatever reason. But yeah, this is a new case of just literally everybody hating this guy. This poor dude who maybe started off as a cool idea, but then turned into kind of a disappointment that they can't forget about. And I guess, yeah, they do have that policy of characters, they have to continue coming back. We can't forget about anybody. So it's kind of a blemish that they'll have to remind themselves of every single time that they make a new Mortal Kombat, which is interesting. Like, I don't would anybody be mad if they forgot about Su Hao? I mean, you can use him as a meme, and it's kind of funny. So maybe in that aspect, he did provide something positive to the series. If that's the case, then yeah, maybe he wasn't that bad.
He sucks. He is not a good character. Nobody wants him to come back. But I just think that it's interesting, this cyclical nature that NetherRealm had with its audience, where one side would hate Su Hao, so the other side would hate Su Hao too. His chances of getting into another game, or even a side project like Cobra and Kira got into Snowblind, are all but a dream. Maybe they'll turn it around and try to do something with him, but someone will have to want to do that for that to happen.
Probably not.
Pound for pound, though, the series with the goofiest one in...
Okay, now we're finally getting back into some territory that I could talk about. There are a lot of goofy characters in KOF. I wonder if he's going to talk about the... I forgot his name, but the old small drunk guy. I believe he's supposed to be like Athena's master or something to teach them about their psychic powers. I don't think he comes back in later KOFs.
Duns has to be King of Fighters. Now, KOF is usually pretty good about keeping characters around. Jin has been glued to Athena and Sai at the hip.
Oh, we're definitely going to talk about the American sports team. 100% pre-watched. But yeah, even when we initially learned about KOF 15 and we were reading the interviews that the characters did for their introduction to 15, there were still like little bits here and there mentioning older teammates or characters that had kind of been sidelined and don't compete in KOF anymore. And even characters that never really show up in the game, that are just kind of side characters that are important to the backstory of these characters, they still come back and they do show up, sometimes even in really important plot pivotal ways too. Which was what I thought was really neat about King of Fighters.
For decades now, and we've only managed to pry him off a few times. From KOF 94 to 98, there's only a single instance of a team getting cut. But this isn't Remy cutting, or even Su Hao cutting. It's worse than both of them. Say hello to Brian Battler, Lucky Glover, and Heavy D.
Man, Brian, playing as Brian and just doing the spin is so fun, man. I don't care if I win or lose, just seeing this man spin brings me great joy. Spin!
I'm glad you remember what your moves
are. Stop it! Stop using your fireballs! Let me spin! Whoa! Woohoo! Yeah! Spin for the win, baby.
American sports. Now, for those who didn't know, King of Fighters was originally envisioned as a way to cross over SNK's two most popular fighting game franchises, Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting.
Yep.
During development, though, they decided to cast an even wider net and pull in more SNK franchises, and the franchises they picked would end up becoming staple teams for the rest of the series. Team Ikari Warriors added the best characters in the series, Ralph One-Man World War Jones and Clark You Will Regret Being Born Steel. Team Psycho Soldiers gave them plenty more work to do as they redesigned Athena every time she showed up. Team Women Fighters and Korean Justice gave them the chance to airdrop in the most popular characters from their fighting games. But it also left the door open for Choi, so it was definitely—
Oh yeah, Choi. I mean, him and the big guy, they still get mentioned in Kim's backstory, yeah? They're still there, right? They're not in 15, that's for sure, but I think they appear again in some other game.
A mistake. That left Team American Sports to represent SNK's various sport franchises, like Street Hoops and Football Frenzy. The team would make their debut in the first King of Fighters game in 1994, and among the three of them, there was certainly something there. Heavy D was the roster's resident boxer, which let him dash across the screen with big punches and big sweeping uppercuts. Glauber might have the worst projectile in a fighting game ever, but at least he gets a knockoff genocide
It's funny,
cutter.
though.
And hey, even a bad genocide cutter is still a genocide cutter. And Brian does this. The team as a whole is pretty fun and complement each other really well. Brute force your way in with Brian, pick him apart with D, then sweep him up with Glauber. I even managed to beat Rugal, and besides my desk now assuming it owes me money, it wasn't the worst time ever. They even had a fair bit of personality, which not a lot of other characters in this can claim. Heavy D's the quiet and reserved leader, but lets his back tattoo do the talking for him. Glauber's the cocky and in-your-face type who drops basketballs on your head, and Brian's the type to take a basketball to the head and make a loud bell noise. So they're no Team Japan in terms of all original characters, but they can have a comfy spot on the roster, right? It would make all the sense in the world.
No, they
KOF
won't.
95 is pretty much just a patch to make KOF 94 a playable video game. So just import all the same teams, right? Well, see, KOF 94 is a marvel of cramming 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag. The game was—
Oh yeah, the fact that they were able to cram so many fighters into one video game with the tech that they had at the time was incredible. Like, even fighting games that come out nowadays, modern fighting games don't have as many characters as KOF was able to achieve with his very first entry.
pushing the software hard. So 8 teams and 24 characters was the most it could do in its current state. So if they wanted to include the brand new team, Team Rivals, they would have to cut one team from the game. When you size up who's on which team, the answer to cut Team American Sports was pretty obvious. Oh yeah, and who's the punk on the new team that's so important we had to cut all 3?
Oh, Iori. The man, the myth, the legend. That was an absolute, like, knock out of the park. A slam dunk of a character. So we did have to sacrifice Team American Sports, but, like, maybe it was for the best. we could still give them a spot, hopefully someday, but it's hard to be mad at them when what we got was Iori.
Now, it's all fine and good to have a dud team on your first outing. You had to make 8 of them. There was no way you were gonna bat 1,000. But SNK has a very interesting way of keeping Team American Sports around, and that's to constantly dump on them at every given opportunity. Suhao had it bad. No one's arguing that. But how many characters got into Mortal Kombat at the expense of Suhao? A running joke in the King of Fighters series became that whenever a new team of bad guys needed to be introduced, they'd be introduced by beating up Team American Sports, stealing their invites to the tournament, and leaving them in the dust. In KOF 95, Team Rival, made up of Billy Khan, Eiji Kisaragi, and Iori Yagami, would enter the tournament by stealing their invites from Team American Sports. Then in 97, the New Faces team of Yashiro, Shermie, and Chris picked theirs up the same way. Now, they would reappear in KOF 98, and in all fairness, their movesets got a huge upgrade, with better inputs, quicker startups and endings, and a whole bunch of new stuff too. But, like I said, dream matches aren't being counted here, since literally everybody introduced in the saga would be there by the game's final update. It would be cruel, but predictable if they were the only ones excluded. Then there's the artwork SNK keeps making referencing Team American Sports, but only as the punching bags for other teams. The most they get is being the focus of Orochi Iori's ending in SVC Chaos, but only as the people he attacks. And as if it couldn't get any worse, in the official King of Fighters card game, the three of them got their very own card. And the artwork?
Oh my god! We saw that artwork in Thorgy's retrospective. I didn't know that was a part of the official card game that they had going on. Of course they had a card game. But these poor dudes, man, they deserve better.
Obviously, this is some good-natured ribbing. There isn't some nefarious reason for Team American Sports exclusion. It's just never been a priority at SNK, and when people started noticing they were missing, they decided to have some fun with it. This has prompted a pretty sizable fan movement to get them back into a game. They're not unpopular, and they have some neat moves that would be fun to see expanded upon. Except after years and years of joking at their expense, SNK literally doesn't know if we're being serious or not.
Okay, I actually learned about this in the comments of the last KOF retrospective that we did, where people were talking about it. Literally, SNK genuinely asked, is this a meme? Are you guys joking? And I get it. From the perspective of the company, they're spending time and resources in order to make these characters, put them into the game, give them movesets, try to balance them, right? And if it's all just a meme and nobody really wants to play them or see them or buy them as DLC, then it's kind of money wasted. But no, I think it is genuine. I think that their concepts can be pretty cool and expanded upon. I don't really see any other fighting games out there with characters quite like these, especially Brian and his little helicopter spin thing. So, I don't know, we could make it a unique thing. Yeah, I think it could work. Do we have to start like a petition or something to let SNK know that there's enough people there? Or will they still think that once it reaches a certain number of signatures that it's still just a meme that went viral?
In the smartest a game company has ever been, they reached out and asked fans if they're being serious about their inclusion. Since to make them DLC could be a gamble, since if it's just for a joke, the DLC would flop and the company would lose money. No company has ever had this much self-awareness to not try and cash in on a joke people aren't being serious about. So right now, their hopes are somewhere between non-existent, since it would kill the joke, and maybe, because if the support gets serious, they might have a chance. But if you want to...
I mean, that's a good point, right? Where it can still remain as a joke, as a beloved meme, let's say, as long as they don't get to play in King of Fighters. It's a shame, but I guess it is what it is.
Talk about no chance in hell, you have to look at KOF 14, the rebirth of King of Fighters. The rebirth of King of Fighters. The rebirth of King of... If you can get past how it's ugly as sin, it's actually a really good fighting game. And as the first 3D King of Fighters, the team at SNK wanted to make this game as distinct as possible.
Yeah, I think SNK hasn't really nailed the 3D look for King of Fighters, at least. 15 looks a lot better than 14. That said, I still don't think 15 looks that good comparatively to other 3D fighters. Or well, I guess 2.5D fighters they would be referred to as, that are currently on the market. I don't really know if there's any news on a 16 being worked on, or if they're still just actively developing 15. But well, they're getting close and they're improving. And I think a game like Samurai Showdown does look pretty damn good, but they do use a different shader, it seems like. I don't really know much the technical side of things, but I think for KOF, the 2D art, the 2D pixel art, is a lot better than their current 3D models.
And introduce the largest cast of new fighters in the series for a 58-character roster. Now, the roster had some big hits. Luong, Kukuri, and King of Dinosaurs come to mind. But there were also a bunch of other characters that were fine. Team South America, Sylvie Palapala, Alice, they're all...
Wait, Sylvie Palapala? Really? We really liked Sylvie's design in 15, but we did get a lot of comments saying that she was kind of universally hated on her introduction. I don't know. A different perspective. We weren't really attached to the series as a whole before, getting into 15, so we didn't have any preconceptions of it. It just seemed very unique comparatively to everybody else, but maybe it was that uniqueness that was kind of off-putting to a lot of people.
All good. But if you're making a roster of new characters about the same size as your first ever roster, you're gonna run into a few flops, and these two characters are so bad and so unpopular, I feel confident, despite them being fairly new, that they're never ever coming back.
Really?
Let's get the boring one out of the way first. So, Kim Cap-Wan is insanely popular. If you're ranking the male characters from across the series in terms of popularity, I'd say Kim is a top 10 choice. He's been around since Fatal Fury 2.
I mean, surprisingly, when you look at Kim's design, he feels kind of like a generic martial arts man, but when you actually get to know him, he's so much more fun than he seems to be on the outside. So I do like that his character has a lot more behind it than what it appears to be.
And has never dipped in popularity or missed a game. He even made it into King of Fighters 12, which was close to featuring 0 characters. All of this popularity has earned him a healthy supporting cast. There are his 2 students, Chang and the death of all happiness in the world, Choi, his rival, Shun-hun, Mei Li, another student with a Kamen Rider-inspired stance-changing gimmick, his 2 sons eventually grow into a Yang and Yun situation in Gaoro Mark of the Wolves, and even Chai Lim from the Maximum Impact series is another student. His popularity birthed at least 3 more characters into existence, and literally birthed 2 of them.
Literally, true. I think one of his sons did make it into City of the Wolves, though, so at least there's that. I don't think the other son did, but a lot of people said that it was probably a good idea because he didn't have too much of a personality. I could be wrong on that, though, so if you guys know more, feel free to fill me in, but that's what I heard.
So the question naturally came up, well, if Kim's so great, who's the guy that trained him? Well, with Chang and Choi busy, Kim now needed new team members to reform Team Korean Justice, and found them in the form of Luong and his Taekwondo master Gong Il. Now, Kim is defined almost solely by his intense hatred of evil. He detests bad guys and started his Korean Justice program to rehabilitate dangerous criminals like Chang and Choi. You would think that this sense of righteousness would come from his master, but no, Gong Il is nothing like that. He's an incredibly laid-back and easygoing guy who finds Kim's devotion to justice. Well, he's happy that his student is a good guy, but thinks he needs to tone it back a bit. Gong Il's problem stems from no real hook to pick him as anything other than a second shot at using Kim if Kim gets knocked out. He shares a lot of moves with his student, except he's actually more limited in some regards than Kim, losing out on the grounded version of some aerial kicks. Now, I do like...
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense that they would fight similarly to each other, considering this is his master and this is who taught him how to, fight. But you still run into the issue of, if they're doing the same things, but this one is doing it worse than the other, then what is the reason for this one to exist?
That in a regard because it shows through gameplay that Kim has thoroughly surpassed his master, but that doesn't make me want to play as Gong Il, that just reminds me how cool Kim is.
Yeah, it's a cool, lore story thing, character evolution and arc, but in practice, in gameplay, not so much. This reminds me of the whole, social link system thing that they had in an older KOF game, where depending on the characters that you would pair with each other on the team, and the lore that each character had, if they didn't like each other in lore, then you'd get negative bonuses and you'd lose meter. Whereas if they did like each other in lore, then you would gain more meter. But that kind of defeated the whole purpose of choosing your fighters for your team in KOF and limited the kinds of teams that you can make. Plus, at the time, not everybody was privy to all the lore details, especially because all the lore was told in so many different forms of media. You'd have to go read the manga, you'd have to go play this game. It was cool in concept, in theory, but in actual practice, I'm glad that they don't have that system anymore. I mean, I wouldn't mind if they had it as maybe an option, but I don't know how much I'd use that.
His supers especially lack a level of flair that leave him feeling super flat. His character is probably the best aspect about him, but again, it's not for his personality or anything he does, it's based purely on how he interacts with Kim. Getting to see the ruthless Taekwondo master who destroys evil without remorse or mercy, now nervous and flustered against his master and his master's flirty girlfriend who butt up against his hard and fast ideas of justice, is fun. Speaking of Luong, she might be the biggest nail in the coffin for Gong-Eel's chances. See, SNK loves to gauge the popularity of its characters by holding fan polls, asking the fans what they think of certain characters and who they would like to see come back. After they emptied the ballot box from all the Team American sports ballots stuffed inside, Luong came out on top as the most popular newcomer from KOF 14, ranking in the top 20.
I wonder why. I wonder why I'm also practicing a lot of Luong in my free time. But hey, if it works, it works.
And Gong-Il placed last. Yes,
Damn.
Out of all 58 characters, save for the boss of the game, Verse, Gong-Il placed dead last as the least popular character, and it's by an order of magnitudes. Terry.
Okay, yeah. Like, in that instance, just bring Luong back into the game. There's no need for Gong-Il anymore. If people don't want him, then there's no reason to spend so much money and time developing him. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think Gong-Il's gonna show up. It was an attempt, but we didn't really pull it off, unfortunately.
Bogard won the poll with a staggering 1,287 votes.
Yeah, Terry's
while
popular.
Gong-Il managed to scrounge up a mere 107. This
Damn.
is not a popular character, and with SNK now aware of that fact thanks to the polls, it's unlikely they'll be itching to bring him back. Even Kim seems to have suffered the effects of Gong-Il since he missed out on the base roster of KOF 15, something he
Really?
had never done before in any game. But
Oh, I guess that was the first. I was aware that he was DLC because I don't have Kim, but I thought, because he was popular, then they're putting him as DLC. I guess it's kind of the opposite.
what about right above Gong-Il? Managing to score only 23 more votes is our second biggest loser.
Who is
and
this guy?
surprisingly, he's still
Oh.
related to Kim in some way.
Oh, it's
Remember how
Choi.
I said that Chang and Choi were busy in this
Oh,
game?
no, Chang, yeah, Chang.
What I meant was they were in prison. While they were stuck in there, the two found out about the king of the prison, a mysterious man said to have a godly intellect who all the other prisoners worshipped. They found him and asked him for his help to regain their spark for villainy.
My
and
God.
he accepted, forming Team Fugitive.
It's
Chang,
Choi.
Choi, and their new leader, Xanadu.
Xanadu.
Where to start with Xanadu? Well, I guess his design. But what's happening with his design?
What in the world?
He has the prison jumpsuit like the others do, but under a big puffy coat with a blue braided goatee that reaches down to his waistline.
Okay, I'll be honest, bro kind of looks like a One Piece villain. Like, what is happening with this design?
White face paint, a crown, giant beady eyes, and a lump on top of his head. He is a bizarre design, and fighting game players are usually a little more accepting of weird designs. But there's Necro and Voldo weird, and then there's Xanadu weird. KOF 14 as a whole has a bit of an over-designing problem. Just look at Shune. It rolled up pant leg, headphones, tie. Really brings this together as a formal look. You could wear this to a funeral. But Xanadu is all that visual confusion, and he doesn't even look cool. Then there's his moveset and...
Okay, I wouldn't necessarily say that Shune is cool, at least in my opinion. But he's definitely cooler than Xanadu.
Boy, is he strange. Xanadu's supposed super intellect is more like complete insanity, as he fights by swinging his arms around, throwing tantrums,
So weird, man.
cradling his opponent, and throwing them like a ball. He certainly has a...
No, genuinely, I can't see somebody seeing this character and being like, yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for from a fighting game. I love the way his moves look. I want to spend a lot of time in the lab playing as him. That said, maybe there are people who really like this kind of weird, jokey character. The ones that I appreciate aren't the same as Xanadu. I feel like he's kind of in his own category.
unique moveset, a weird mix of grappler and rushdown with a lot of moves that hit in strange ways, but I think seeing him in action does more to tell you what you need to know than anything I can say.
What the hell is going
Did
on?
God just
What?
try to smite Xanadu and fail? His character as well is... Well, they definitely got across the crazy point. You get the sense that this guy's mind has been lost for a while, and I don't know if that's necessarily good. His arcade mode ending with Chang and Choi is him incoherently babbling as he burns the prize money, while Chang and Choi realize they didn't have it that bad with Kim. Ultimately, I think that while he's certainly more memorable than Gong Il, he's just a few steps too far in the wrong direction, and if that poll is anything to go off of, not many people wanted to follow him. Distressingly, though, there were at least 100 people willing to follow him, and those are the makings of a cult. But these guys, Xanadu, Su Hao, Q, Remy, these are small potatoes. The final character, or rather characters, are the strangest fighting game mystery of all time. A character so confusing, so shrouded in mystery, the very company who made him wasn't allowed to talk about him for years. Those who know King of Fighters already know who it is, but for those that don't,
it has to be.
Allow me to introduce you to K49.
Yep.
Short for K9999, this is a character introduced at the end of the second story arc of King of Fighters.
So we haven't gotten to that part of the arc yet where they introduced Cronin, but from what I recall, for this particular arc in KOF, they had gotten somebody who was like a really big fan of Akira, and I think the whole team was really big fans of Akira, considering certain inspirations for other characters as well. But, he really liked dark, dystopian sci-fi settings, so it makes sense. But for his design, it's basically almost a one-to-one to another character in Akira. And due to potential copyright issues, SNK kind of had to avoid putting him in any games, I think up until KOF 15, from what I recall. But I could be wrong, and I'm sure if I am, then Bumbles will mention it.
The Nest Saga. In summary, an evil cartel called Nest wants global domination, and used the captured Kyo Kusanagi to create an army of clones.
A bunch of clones. Yep.
This resulted in K-Dash, the saga's main character, Chrysalid, the saga's first boss, and Kyo 1 and 2, named after the pencils. After K-Dash turns against Nest, they send Kula Diamond, a girl with ice powers, to try to stop him. After that doesn't work, though, the team at Nest decides to go back to the well that had worked so well before, and create one final clone using Kyo's DNA. This would be their 9,999th Kyo clone, ergo the name K49.
Yep.
On top of having the most slappable head in the entire franchise, K49 came armed to the teeth, not just with Kyo's Kusanagi flame, but biomechanical implants into his arm that could let him fire a gun, create barriers, and envelop the screen in light. K49 was truly psychotic, caring for nothing from his superior's commands to his own well-being, as long as it meant that he got to kill his opponent. He held the most hatred for K-Dash, considering him a weakling and beneath him. Alongside Angel, Kula, and Kula's handler Foxy, the team entered the King of Fighters tournament to take out Nest's enemies once and for all. After figuring out his origins as a clone, though, he freaks out, injuring Foxy and leaving Kula to drown in the ocean. Alongside Angel, the only person he considers a friend, he rides off into the sunset as the story finishes up with
look at that. Look at that shot. Yeah. Oh, I wonder where we got the inspiration for this one. But yeah, I also remember learning about Angel. There's some very obvious reasons why I was interested in her character, but I did hear a lot of people say, don't forget, she's not a good person. I guess we'll learn about that when we get to that part of the story in the retrospectives.
K-Dash. Now, he does reappear in KOF 2002, but that was another dream match.
I mean, it's a dream match,
So why is this character so important? Why is he so controversial, and why would he never appear in another King of Fighters game? Well, I was kinda leaving something out of his move list. Sure, he has the gun and the barrier, but he has one more move, too.
The mechanical arm? Oh, with the flesh,
I've been trying to hold back on the obvious, but K49 is just one great big Akira reference. That isn't that weird on its own, though. Plenty of SNK characters have been references. Some of them have even been distinct. They named the main character of their fighting game Rio, and nobody ever stopped them. But K49 was about a hop, a skip, and a jump over the line. That giant arm of his is just one of many. Every single one of his special move names is a reference to a line from Akira.
Whoa.
His voice actor Nozomu
Whoa, okay. Calm down, my dudes. We're going a little too far with the reference there.
Sasaki was also the voice of his inspiration, Tetsuo from
What?
Akira. He has
Oh, yeah, it's Tetsuo. There you go. I was like, the name starts with a T, but I'm not confident enough to say it's Tetsuo. But that's insane that they got the same VA too, the same move names. And yeah, this is definitely a lawsuit waiting to happen.
a special dialogue in KOF 2002 with fellow Kyo clone Kusanagi, who's voiced by Kaneda's voice actor from Akira. And what do they do when they meet? Quote Akira at each other. K49's entire existence is just one big reference to Akira, and not a very subtle one. Following KOF 2002, the game would get a re-release as 2002 Ultimate Match, filling in the gaps and bringing back a lot of fan favorites who missed out on the initial 2002 roster.
Cool beans. Kane and I will stream 2002 Unlimited Match at some point. Once we get past that game, the retrospective, I think we'll do like a one-off stream and see how it plays. Or maybe play it more if we really enjoy it.
Strangely, though, the only character removed was K49. No other character got this treatment, and it instantly got everybody asking, what was the deal?
Why? Yeah.
As if that wasn't weird enough, SNK would later update their website and remove K49's profile. All references to him were scrubbed from their records. In his place was a new character, Nameless. Nameless was the 9,999th Kyo clone, only this time he was born on Mars and had a special glove made to control his fire powers, and was in love with a girl named Isolde who had ice powers.
I love how they went full just like, oh yeah, this guy's nameless. No way nobody can copyright us now.
And she died and is now living inside of his glove. I'm getting flashbacks. And a nosebleed. They managed to roll K49, K-Dash, and Coola's backstory into a single character. And after Ultimate Match, he also never appeared again. K49 was not ignored by the company, they went scorched earth in regards to his whole existence. Developers refused to give comments when asked about K49, and when they would, they were cryptic and vague as to what was going on and why he was removed. For various reasons, K9999 is a scary character to deal with. Of course, he's based on
you know who,
and has, well, similarities that we're happy a certain Katsuhiro Otomo didn't object to. If you count the similarities between you-know-who and the other you-know-who, you'd be counting from now to Saint Swithunde. K9999 boasts a big following of fans in Korea and Japan, but no other character has such obstacles against him appearing in KOF again. Yep, he sure is a hard character to comment on. K49's erasure went even further than just treating him as the blue-haired stepchild. When time came to publish an encyclopedia for all the KOF characters, K49's entry in the book was this. Blacked out, little information given, you'd think the character did something wrong and was persona non grata for the job SNK did covering him up. By the time of KOF 14, Angel had made it back into the game, and both in-game and in the promotional mangas beforehand, K49 wasn't just ignored, the events of KOF 2001 were altered, so now only Angel was present with Kula and Foxy when they defeated Ness. In all the artwork you can unlock in KOF 14, anytime K49 appears, he was edited out, covered up, or otherwise removed, including the official Team Nest's artwork. When people reached out to the KOF All-Stars Twitter account for answers, all they got was, K? I'm afraid I don't know who that is.
Please understand.
It was treated as an open secret that you weren't allowed to mention K49, but small references to him would still seep in every now and again. In Days of Memories, a King of Fighters dating sim, Angel is presented with a plush toy of K49. Series artist Falcon was making art of all of the KOF characters in order, and when logically it was time for K49's turn, he instead drew a random guy wearing a big green hoodie that obscured whether or not it was.
Yo, I actually love how much they're kind of playing into the meme while also being super careful. Like, incredibly careful to not mention anything about this guy. You still have to acknowledge that he did exist at one point, but like, yeah.
was really K49. When asked about the character, Falcon himself would make the situation even stranger. When asked online why K49 was removed, Falcon would just tell us it wasn't for the reasons we think, and the reason was very peculiar. The obvious answer that everybody had just assumed was correct was that they had run into trouble with the company that owned Akira, Toho, or the creator of the story, Katsuhiro Otomo.
Yeah.
But as the previous quote shows,
not?
according to SNK, he didn't have a problem with it. So there was some completely unrelated reason SNK had to shelve a character they admitted had grown a fast fan base, and was even considered the rival to K-Dash in his arc, after Kula ended up being far more reasonable than Iori was to Kyo. It wasn't until years later, 20 years after his final appearance, that suddenly, out of nowhere, a new character appeared. Cronin McDougal, and it took about as long as he's been on screen for people to suss out, wait a minute, that's K49! The stance, the supers, sure his head could absorb slaps a lot better with all that hair, but you can't hide it from me, that's totally him! And when you beat the game with him, Angel, and Kula, Angel confirms it. This is K49, finally out of hiding and ready to make his next move. So then the next obvious question is, what the hell is going on?
Why?
After Cronin's reveal, SNK went on to confirm that the legal problems everybody had assumed were the reason for K49's removal were false. SNK never received backlash from Toho for the character, and they never once tried to get him removed. They just lied! Like, for no reason. They had nothing to...
What the fuck? No, genuinely, really? Was it all just a big sham? Did they just bamboozle the entire community this entire time? Did I receive false information on this too? Well, I wasn't expecting to learn this about Cronin. Or maybe I did, and I just got it mixed up with other information that people didn't have, like, fully completed. I don't know, it's hard to say whenever there's, like, comments that contradict each other a little bit, like, who's correct and whatnot, but man, genuinely though, why?
Gain. They just wanted to know how good it felt to flick their forked tongues in our ears. So it was fine to use K49 all this time, and they just didn't. But then why shroud the reason for his exclusion in so much mystery? Why scrub him from the face of the planet? Why go through all this trouble when there was no reason to? A popular explanation as to why K49 was scrubbed the way he was because he was a creation of Eolith, the company that purchased King of Fighters after SNK went through one of its dozen bankruptcies. Except that doesn't make that much sense, because none of the other characters introduced in King of Fighters 2001 experienced the same thing. They didn't do that with Mei Li, they didn't do that with Foxy, and they sure as hell did not do that with Angel. On top of that, KOF 2001 and the original version of KOF 2002 are still purchasable on modern consoles, and those are the only games that K49 appeared in. If there was a big legal problem surrounding the character, why would they still be able to sell games with him in them? Then SNK community manager Crispy Kaiser would go on to breathe a sigh of relief as he was able to reveal that he had to keep the lie going for years and he was finally able to be truthful about K49. But why lie in the first place?
Yeah.
The best explanation people can surmise was the whole K49 controversy was a way that SNK was trying to build hype for his eventual return. Like setting him up as this one thing you're not allowed to discuss, like you were breaking the rules for talking about him. That way, whenever they decided to bring him back, the fan base that would sprout up around the mystery would go ballistic to see him back.
Okay, this is kind of what I was talking about when it came to in Street Fighter 3 with the introduction of Q, right? Like this massive mystery of who is this character? The theorists start going in, there starts to build a fan base, a potential reveal is kind of hyped, that hopefully we'll get more information on him in some upcoming titles someday. Maybe they were going for something like that with this particular situation. Certainly did cause quite a bit of a misunderstanding here though, especially with how closely related to the Tetsuo, right, from Akira, this character is clearly inspired by him.
That's... You know what? Now that we're at the end, I can say it was a clever idea, I don't know if it needed to go on for 20 years, but nobody ever tried something like this before, and to say it worked would be an understatement. Cronin got to enter the game with a lot of hype. He's since become a big fan favorite and managed to get on an EVO winning team. So, as odd as the plan was, it worked better than I think anybody could have anticipated.
That's hilarious,
As for
man.
Nameless, I don't really know if there's a need to even bring Nameless back. He was created to replace K49, and now he's been replaced by K49.
Well, you know, he was nameless. His whole purpose has kind of been fulfilled.
Cronin adopted a bunch of his moves and aesthetics, so he's even less just K49, but a collection of the entire story of K49 wrapped up in a single character, which, at the end of the day, makes him one of the strangest characters, not just in a fighting game, but any game.
Of all the things that I was going to learn new info about, I did not think it was going to be King of Fighters. But I'm glad that we cleared that up. What a peculiar situation that in retrospect is like really funny. Like there's this whole conspiracy theory building up that everybody has to agree to it to not mention anything at all about this guy. It's kind of like an innocent lie, so I guess it's easier to keep under wraps, but yeah, the fact that they were able to do so for 20 years is kind of amazing. But yeah, dudes, this video is super fun, and I learned a lot about a different series that I haven't gotten to yet as well. Especially that one death scene, that was hilarious with the, this isn't brutality, this is a fatality. But yeah, dudes, that's gonna do it from me today. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed your time here and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later, dudes.